Good morning, everyone. My name is MightyStream. Today is June the 5th, brought to you by Hope Through Navigation. And this is our Hood Recovery Services. You can reach me at recoveryofhope21@gmail.com. Well, I am looking forward to doing the Just for Today in a meditation with you, dated for June the 5th. And we're not quite through the first week of June, but it's exciting that time keeps on ticking away, whether we're ready for it or not. So I just want to encourage you to do all that you can do to be ready. And one of those things is to consider a meditation or be prayerful and thoughtful at the beginning of your day before you start engaging a lot of people. I'll talk to you more about that, but let's go ahead and get into June the 5th, honest prayer. Although honesty is difficult to practice, it is most rewarding. Basic text, page 96. How difficult we find it to be honest. Many of us come to NA so confused about what really happened in our lives that it sometimes takes months and years to sort it all out. The truth of our history is not always as we have told it. How can we begin to be more truthful? Many of us find it the easiest to be honest in prayer. With our fellow addicts, we sometimes find that we have a hard time telling the whole truth. We feel certain that we won't be accepted if we let others know us as we really are. It's hard to live up to the terminally hip and fatally cool image so many of us portrayed. In prayer, we find an acceptance from our higher power that allows us to open our hearts with honesty. As we practice this honesty with the God of our understanding, we often find that it has a ripple effect in our communications with others. We get in the habit of being honest. We begin to practice honesty when we share at meetings and work with others. In return, we find our lives enriched by deepening friendships. We even find that we can be more honest with ourselves, the most important person to be truthful with. Honesty is a quality that is developed through practice. It isn't always easy to be truthful, totally truthful. Let me repeat that. It isn't always easy to be totally truthful, but when we begin with our higher power, we find it easier to extend our honesty to others. Just for today, I will be honest with God, myself, and others. This is a very beautiful, precise reading. I think it's easy to follow. I think that the topic of being honest in prayer helps an individual to understand that if you can develop a spirit of prayer in which you're praying and talking to the God of your own understanding as honestly as you possibly can. Because usually what prefaces that relationship of prayer is that the God of your understanding already knows all of this anyway, right? So it's not like you're sharing something new, but you are in the sense of doing something new because now you're verbalizing, you're actually talking about your truth. And why is your truth so important? Because everything else that has been built with you in it, every relationship that has been built with a part of you in it, right? Every activity, every undergoing, right? Pretty much, if you were using, there's some instability in that foundation of what has been built. So in other words, if you only give me half of your truth and I go into a relationship with you and I find out that there's more to your story than what you shared with me, and God forbid if we're married at this stage, right? Because that's a little bit more difficult to get out of or even want to divorce, right? But if I go into a relationship with you and I find out, let's say, for instance, I find out that you are LGBTQ. Maybe I find out that we're in a heterosexual, you know, intimate relationship. And maybe I find out, you know, we're married and I find out later that you're actually bisexual. Now, the person that I've developed a relationship with, in a sense, that's who I've come to love, right? Now we have this extra component, and maybe you haven't been active in a relationship with anyone of the same sex in years. But now all of a sudden, for some reason, you're starting to have this leaning, and you feel like you need to talk to me about, right? There's a couple of ways and many ways that people have handled it, including violence, right? But in that situation, you have not given me who you truthfully are. I have married half of who you are. And you have intentionally withheld some very important information. So I am not obligated to remain in that marriage with half of that truth. Now I have the whole truth. Now, depending on how much you love an individual and your understanding with them moving forward from there may determine how you stay connected. But that's just one example. There's many. I think this is National Pride Month, the month of June. So there's many other examples that don't include that type of an example, LGBTQ, right? But that is one that I can think of that has come up with individuals that I know. And in one instance, they just decided to stay married. So the husband became a transgendered female. So he became a female and she stayed married to his his wife. So we had two women now married. But that's because of the history and the love to conquer whatever, no matter what, that they decide to stay together. All right. And there's some instances I know of in situations where they're not actually married. In one, it ended the marriage, but in another one, it just created a relationship where the male in the relationship became a female, and the female in the relationship was more masculine. So she transgendered into a male. So they flipped roles in that relationship and stayed together. So I'm telling you that there are some things that can really shake your boat, that can really come up, that are deep with this being honest or not being honest, or lying by omission. There's some very deep things that can come up. And so as you go through your life, as you go through recovery, especially if you're thinking about being in a relationship with a person and inviting them into your day-to-day life, it's better for them to know your weaknesses and your strengths, not for them to just perceive them, right? But in this type of situation, putting your best foot forward is not always what's needed. They need to know that you hate doing dishes, you hate doing laundry. They need to know that there's some household chores that you're just not really about doing, right? But you're good on all this other stuff. They need to know if you've just been cooking for them while you date with them, or if you're a person that really enjoys being in the kitchen and cooking. Now, I believe for me, I enjoy cooking. I believe that I enjoy healthy living, right? So I'm always interested in how to make vegetables or fruit. I'm interested in, holistic type cooking, right? So that excites me, but no one around me enjoys that. So that's something that I hold back for myself. Whereas for everyone else, I feel like I'm a fast order cook because I'm in there whipping up whatever they think they want to eat. And I get irritated with that. I do, right? And so I had to let that be known. I'm not really the type of person that wants to be in the kitchen cooking for everybody and no one's contributing. I'm not. So there's certain things when you get into a relationship with someone that it's very important for them to not just have to figure it out, but for you to be honest about who you are. And this just for today in a meditation suggests that you start that with your higher power, that you begin to have that dialogue with your higher power. And as you become more honest in prayer and with yourself, you will find that you are able to extend that with other people. Now, let's say, for instance, you are a person that has come into the program and you've maintained a certain reputation. Here it talks about maintaining that terminally hip and fatally cool images is hard for us to do, right? We portrayed it for so long, but maintaining it, especially through the process of getting clean, becomes very difficult because you could be a person that you've always fell back on selling drugs, making money off of your drugs, and you never really had to work at a intimate partner relationship because whoever it was willing to give you as much sex as you want if you was willing to give them the drugs. Or you never worried about money. You never worried about having a high school education because you didn't need one. You had enough money to do the things that you wanted to do, wear the clothes that you wanted to wear, and go to the places that you wanted to go. So having an education wasn't important to you. You didn't get your GED even. And so now you come into the program and you are clean and recovering. And you're finding out that this idea that you can sell drugs and be clean is not going to work for you because you can go to jail clean. And so you've given up that lifestyle completely. And I say that I'm bringing this into the picture because a lot of people don't give that up completely. There have been people in this program that have thought that they could sell, pills and weed and anything else that they used to sell before they got to the program, and found out that not only could they go to jail clean, but then they became, they became marked within the fellowship as not a safe person to be around if you were really working on being clean. And they didn't like that feeling that they could be in a meeting and people not want to be bothered with them because they know that they're still selling drugs. Okay. So say now you have decided to put that all down and you want to get an education, and you're finding that even to finish getting a GED is going to take some work and some scheduling for you to actually do it. They don't just hand it to you. You have to go to class, you have to study, you have to do homework, you have to pass tests. You can pass out of some topics, some subjects, but for the most part, you have some work that you're going to do. And maybe you just developed a spirit of laziness while you were selling drugs. You like things coming to you easy. Now you're faced with having to work for something that you say you want. And so you find that as you grow in recovery, some of these things that are requiring for you to show up in life are also requiring that you come clean, that you come honest, right? Just because you live like a baller and you were telling people that you had these degrees, now you are, the rubber is meeting the road. You have to do the work because it's very apparent that that person that you were presenting is no longer there. That was not the truth. It was an illusion that you created to manipulate and get what you wanted, right? So I think that we all go through things like that. And that in prayer and being honest in prayer is the first step that this Just for Today in a meditation is suggesting. It concludes with this, that it isn't always easy to be totally truthful, but when we begin with our higher power, we find it easier to extend our honesty to others. Just for today, I will be honest with God, myself, and others. I challenge you today to figure out what areas you can start being more honest with God in, and what areas you can be honest with others in. Now, you may not be able to go back and clean up a bunch of stuff, because in the spirit of the 8th and 9th step, we may direct amends wherever possible, but we don't do it at the expense of hurting other people. So there's some things that you may not be able to go back and just, I did this, and I expect, no, you can't necessarily do that. You'll want to go to your sponsor and discuss that. But moving forward, you can give your honesty as a gift. You can give yourself as a gift in relationships with other people. Okay? So I just want to challenge you to do that, to be honest with God, with yourself and others, and practice it, because practice will make perfect. And I want to talk about this one last thing. I don't want to get out of here too fast. Let me go right back to this. Now, there's a point in here where it says that at the beginning, although honesty is difficult to practice, it is most rewarding. Let me tell you something about that statement, it being most rewarding. Okay? There is nothing as beautiful as being in the world, in life in general, and having relationships and connectivity and friendships with individuals that are based on honesty. Because then there might be some misunderstandings along the way, but it's not because someone has lied or perpetrated something else, right? It's very nice to be able to go into a relationship with a person that you realize has been honest with you and you've been honest with them, and there's no cleanup committee that's needed for that relationship. There is a lot of times where people will only share with you part of the truth, and then I don't know if I told you this before, I don't think I mentioned this before, or I think now that I'm done, I've sorted it all out, I can go ahead and tell you the rest of the story, or I'm pretty sure I didn't mention this piece, but I want to go ahead and talk about it. Or did I ever tell you, did we ever discuss, these are statements that should be like red flags to you, that this person is not, they know there's information, but they're lying by omission. They know there's information they should be sharing, but they're lying by omission because it serves their purpose. Because a lot of times once you've responded to them, now they become responsible to that truth that you've shared with them. And so if they go the other way or they do whatever they want to do, and now they've chosen that pain, they've chosen that trouble, right? And that speaks to a whole nother level of self-esteem issues and core value issues, right? So I hope that makes sense to you, that though when people come to you with conversations like that, that is generally an indication that they have intentionally withheld some other information from you, and they don't trust you enough or trust themselves enough to be completely honest with you. And eventually you begin to take note that any conversation you have with them is subject to change, because they have such a pattern of adding other information along the way. Me personally, I don't let it rock my boat, because I believe that I have a wisdom that has been given to me to know the difference between what I can change and what I cannot change. And that wisdom that I have helps me determine what I'm dealing with in that moment. If it's something that even speaking into it is not valuable, then a lot of times I just refrain. Well, what do you think you want to do? Right. And a lot, it's not being gamey or anything, but it is letting them know you're still going to have to make the decision. I'm not going to make a decision for you, especially internally knowing that you're giving me half of your information because you put me at a disadvantage. Okay. So these are things that I want you to think about, how rewarding it can be honest, in a relationship where everything is on the table. You don't have to hide anything under the table. You don't have to go back and try to make up the story or add to the story or be more truthful about the story. You don't have to do any of that. What you see is what you get. Right. And so that's a beautiful place to be. And also, it opens doors of opportunity to you because people will begin to trust you. Okay, so I want to end it there. And I thank you for listening. I'll look forward to talking to you tomorrow.